It is Thursday, 12 o'clock EST, and that means it's time for Event Domination, where I share everything I've learned scaling my conference and my workshops so you can do the same thing. Because honestly, events, conferences have totally changed my life, completely changed my life. And today, I'm going to share with you how to build an event that sells. Because here's the thing, we actually work with a bunch of events in many different industries all over the place. And one of the advantages to doing that is I get to see a lot of similarities, because a lot of times events will come to us looking for help and they'll say, "Oh, Seth, my event is different because of this," or, "Oh, my audience is different because of that," or, "Oh, my people won't pay this." But it's not that niche. All events, all conferences have the same issues, because we're not in, the tech space. We're not in the fitness space. We're not in the legal space. We're not in the medical space anymore. We're in the conference space, right? We're in the conference industry. And there's ways that I've found that work better. And that's what's allowed us to scale. And that's what's allowed all of our clients to scale as well. So today I'm going to be breaking down how to actually build an event that sells. Because most events, this is what happens. They grow, they get started, and then they get stuck. So they go from zero and they get stuck around this point. It's like 400 to 600 people-ish. And I call this no man's land. This is the no man's land of events. Why? Because they're too big to be small, but there's too small to be big. And we run into a number of issues. Number one is revenue and budget. So to effectively scale an event, you need to be generating significant revenue so you can dump that into your marketing machine. That's how, when I scaled my conference, we started from scratch, literally zero. And then we hit 1,000 people the first year, and then we hit 2,500 people in year two. So that we scaled fast, but we figured out the system in year one, and then we just put that on steroids. But when you're building the event, and when you're trying to scale and you get stuck to 400, 600 people, you likely don't have the revenue you need, because your ticket pricing structure that you have in place probably isn't going to get you to 1,000 people. You have to change your ticket pricing. We're just fortunate that we discovered it through a lot of trial and error very early on with us, and that allowed us to go to the next level pretty fast. But most events, we get a ton of calls every single week that come to us looking for help. And what happens is we just find their pricing structure isn't there, and that holds them back. But also the staffing infrastructure isn't there, because the event itself, it's not generating enough revenue, so you can't have the staff, but then you need the staff to go out and generate that sponsorship, generate those ticket sales. So it's that chicken or the egg approach. So one of the things we do is we basically do a deep dive, rip everything apart, and then we can really figure out and implement what we do inside the event, and really start from a good solid foundation. So we have to get out of this no man's land. This is where most events go to die. And the faster we can get to 1,000 people, the better it is. Because what happens is we've got, with events, we have all sorts of competing events, and most of them are free or almost free, right? To use my event as an example, I'm in the real estate space. On any given week or weekend, there are hundreds of free or almost free events within a 2-hour drive. That's just the way it is. And a lot of people, when I launched my event, because I was coming in as an outsider, I didn't have all those preconceived ideas. I came in with a fresh approach. I was like, you know what? We're going to run a premium event here. And what that did was, number one, that attracted a better audience, but number two, that gave me the revenue I needed to dump back into the marketing to continue to scale. And I firmly believe the best thing I ever did when we launched is to get to that 1,000 person mark in that first year, because the whole pack is down here, those small events. We automatically got out of the pack, and then that allowed us to hit 2,500 the next year, because we were just that far ahead. One of the examples I like to use is, like long distance running, or even the Tour de France, some type of race event. You always have that pack. You want to get out of that pack, because when you're in there, you're getting jostled. People are jockeying for position. If you're the leader, if you're wearing the yellow jersey, you're ahead, right? And you have so much more open road ahead of you without those obstacles. So we always try and scale our clients' events to 1,000 people as fast as possible, because that gives them a lot of room to grow. Now, to get to that 1,000-person mark, we have to do some work, and the way we build this out is really, I call it the 3S, the 3 S's, the 3S formula. And this is how we tackle events. And this was my thought process the first year. So 3S formula. All right, so the first S is speakers. The very first thing. Now, obviously, there's a lot of prep work that goes into it. We do a lot of audience survey data, a lot of demographics to really understand who we're trying to attract. And then we have a whole process that we follow to select the right type of keynote speaker. Because I've seen events where they choose the wrong keynote speaker and it's flat and it flops and you just don't get the buzz and the excitement. So we need to figure out and identify, well, who are the speakers who are going to attract a cold audience who has no idea who you are? Because that's why we are using other speakers and keynote speakers. I want to take my event and bring it into other audiences who have not yet been exposed to me. So, for example, with us, every year we bring in some pretty heavy names. Like we've had A-Rod, Alex, A-Rod, Grant Cardone, Robert Herjavec, Kevin O'Leary, Jordan Belfort. Like we bring in some really, really big names, but we do that in a very, very targeted way because we're trying to tap into different segments of the market with those keynote speakers. For instance, somebody like Grant Cardone is going to tap into a different audience than I do. He has his tribe. Robert Herjavec, very different in terms of personality and appeal. With Robert Herjavec, we get a lot more women, believe it or not, generally over the age of 35 with Robert Herjavec. So, we're tapping into different audiences to all bring them to the event. But the main thing, we have to look at speakers as an asset. A lot of people, especially if they're in that no man's land of events, that 300, 400, 500 person mark, they tend to think of speakers as an expense. Ooh, I don't want to pay for a keynote speaker to come in. Well, the truth is that keynote speaker is not an expense, it's an asset. Because now with that keynote speaker, you're going to be able to appeal and have that credibility and have that sizzle, as we call it, with a cold audience who has no idea you exist, but now they do. And now you bring them to your event, you can make your offer, you send the offer, now they're in your ecosystem. That's how we leverage speakers, and that's why I bring in some really big names, but very targeted. So like I said, we have a whole checklist that we follow when we're identifying what type of speakers, what traits we're looking for with that speaker to tap into whatever sub niche, as we call it, that we're looking to target. So like I said, what speakers are going to attract an audience that has no idea who we are, because we're always looking for cold. We're not running a client fulfillment event where everybody already loves you. Like, that's not why we're running this event. Events are the best way to generate new business for whatever offer you have. Consulting, you name it. Course, events are the best way to do it. Now we have to think about, well, what type of event do we have to build that's going to attract that type of speaker? Because, I can tell you, with some of the big names we bring in, they do not show up for 200 people. And, when I call up their office, because sometimes that's how we get them. I call up their office, and they've kind of heard of our event, or I mentioned, hey, we've got 2,500 people, 3,000, 4,000 people coming. Now they're all ears, because at that level, they want to expand their brand and tap into other audiences. So, for instance, A-Rod's looking to expand his audience, but because he was at the same event as Grant Cardone, now there's cross-pollination. That's what they're looking for. But you have to build the event that's actually going to attract that level of speaker. Because, like I said, they've got a brand, they have a standard, and you have to fit that. So as we're building out your event or reworking your event to scale, we have to keep that in mind. Yeah, we're going after these types of speakers, but what type of event do we have to build to attract them as well, right? It goes both ways. Okay, so that's speakers. Then the second S is sponsors. Now, a lot of people initially are like, I've never really thought of sponsorship, or, I call sponsorship the ugly duckling with events. Because with events, just to go on a bit of a side tangent, there are 3 different streams of revenue with events. So you've got your tickets right here. You got sponsorship. That's your front-end revenue. And then you've got your back-end revenue. So ticket sales and sponsorship comes in before the event. Back end, that's what you sell at the event. That's your gravy. Most events, like sponsorship, it's that enigma. They're doing it wrong. They've got these gold, silver, bronze packages like you see with these charity golf tournaments. They're not doing it the right way. The first thing you have to do is throw out that gold, silver, bronze and rework the whole system. But when done right, when you do it the right way, sponsorship can be really powerful. Because let me frame it this way. Your event solves a main problem for your audience. That's why they're showing up. But within your audience, there's sub-problems or sub-challenges that aren't necessarily covered by your main onstage content. So let me give you an example. Let's say you're running an event for gym owners. And gym owners are coming to your event because they want to learn how to scale, maybe acquire other locations. It's a business building for gym owners, for this example. Within that audience, you're going to have some gym owners who are really struggling with marketing. Other gym owners are really struggling with hiring trainers and staff. Maybe you're just covering the business side or the number side at your event, but you're not even touching on specific marketing, or maybe you're not touching on how to hire trainers. That's not in the event purview. So sponsorship done right, you can actually bring in some key sponsors who solve those sub-challenges that don't step on your toes, but they're going to pay a premium to tap into your audience, because as we get into the ticket pricing, I'll cover that in a bit, you've generated a really valuable audience for them. They will pay a premium as long as you set your sponsorship up right. Don't do the gold, silver, bronze. Nobody cares about logo placements on stage. It doesn't work. But if you set it up right, this can be a substantial source of revenue on the sponsorship side. And plus, that gives your event credibility. So, I remember launching my conference, and your first year, if you're launching your first year conference, you have a steeper hill to climb because you don't have proof of concept. But as soon as you get that one keynote speaker and that one key sponsor, that gives you a lot to work with. I call it gravitational pull. So this is what I mean. Think of a nebula in space. It has all the raw material in it to make a star, but it's all spread out. That's like your conference in your head. You launch it, you have all these ideas, you don't have anything tangible yet. Your job is to create mass as soon as possible. So it's getting that keynote speaker, that key sponsor in there, getting the venue, the dates, everything. Now you have mass. You have something to work with. You have an asset. Now, because it has mass, it's going to start attracting other things within its orbit, and pretty soon you have a star. That's how nebulas create stars, and that's how we create events. So getting that keynote speaker in place, getting that key sponsor in place early helps you a lot in terms of growth. Now, if you're not launching your first conference, if you're looking at scaling your conference, we can leverage what you've already done, but then just put some juice on it and add some steroids, and now we can go off to the races. All right. So bit of a tangent about the, I call this the revenue triad. But this is how we approach revenue generation with events. And there's different ratios depending on the type of event or workshop or conference that you're running. We want to have it fall into certain ratio pillars, but that's a topic for another day. The third S is spectators, or your audience. This comes last. A lot of people think that, oh, well, I have to build this huge audience before I even get my speakers. No. Take it from me. Like we scaled so quickly with my conference. Like we do multi seven figures. The reason we scale so fast is because we do it this way, right? If you want to be like everybody else and get stuck in no man's land, like 99.9% of events, do it that way. But if you want to scale and get into that high attendance range, you got to do it this way. The reason why we worry about spectators last is we have to build a platform, we have to build a stage, a place for them to go first, right? And so when we go into the marketplace, we have to have our messaging dialed in. Now, we do a whole lot of research about the audience way up here when we're doing our speaker selection. We have a whole framework, we have a whole survey we do. We have specific things we need to know. But we don't start going after trying to convert the audience to ticket sales until we have the speakers in place and we have the sponsorship in place, or at least the first couple, like that gravitational pull I was talking about. Once we have that, now we got to get spectators in the room. So with events, a lot of times the big mistake I see is people try having these elongated or these really long marketing cycles. But with the events, you've got your carrot and you have your stick. You've got the carrot that's dangling in front to incentivize somebody, and you've got the stick behind whacking them with pain. Ticket sales is all about the stick. There is no carrot. So you have to set up your marketing plan and your cycle to be very condensed. So there's a lot of urgency and scarcity, and that's what's going to drive action. If you start, I made the mistake one year. We started marketing way too early. We generated these leads. Nobody was buying. There was no urgency, no scarcity, and those leads were dead by the time it was time. So we favor a more compressed approach. We have distinct stages, 4 stages within our marketing plan when we launch something. Just make sure we're hitting all the right boxes in the right timeline to make sure it's successful. So you want to keep it tight, but if you're doing that, you have to have everything else in place so that way you go out into the marketplace with a product, because this is really what it is. This is a product launch, and you have to nail it. So I favor front-loading surprises. So we want to do all of the heavy lifting, all of the legwork, the leg day stuff up front. And then that way, everything's a lot smoother on the back end, and it's cranking. Okay? So in terms of scaling and building an event that sells, we got to follow the 3S formula: the speakers, sponsors, and spectators. Now, the big piece of this, and I alluded to this earlier when we were talking about that no man's land of events running out of revenue, you have to have ticket sales and ticket sales in place that are premium. So here's the thing. Most events are either free or almost free. It's almost the same thing. And this is what I mean, like I said earlier, a lot of events say, hey, Seth, my audience is different, they won't pay, whatever. Hogwash. There's 1,000,001 free events in the real estate space, which is where I built my conference, and I have people paying me $5,000-$6,000 a ticket for my top tier. Why? Because I create the experience, I create the ticket packaging that people actually want. And it's all focused on the experience. Because when you go to sell your back-end product at your event, because there's going to be a percentage of your audience that's going to convert and who wants to continue working with you. I've seen events do 10%, 15%, 20%, even 30%, depending on how good the event is structured, how good the product is, how good the person is at pitching it. You can range from 10 to 30%. We actually just had an event they did multiple seven figures in terms of back end, and they were converting around the 10% mark, but they had, really high ticket, and it was a really good audience. But how do you get that good audience that's going to convert at 10%, 15, 20, 30%? How do you find them? Well, it's not by offering free or almost free tickets. That's not the way to do it. Because what happens when you offer something for free or almost free? Well, you attract people who want things for free or almost free. That's not who you're looking for. And, with my conference, we get a lot of compliments from people saying, hey, like, you have a really solid audience. Like, everybody's really engaged, really in tune. Everybody's serious. Why? Because they all paid a premium to get in there. But they know that since they paid a premium, other people are paying the same premium, and it's going to attract like high quality people. And that's why, when you've built that type of audience and you go to make your offer, that's where you get those high conversion rates. So one of the first things we do with a lot of events we work with is we rework their pricing. Number one, to generate the revenue we need to actually scale the thing, but number two, to make sure we have the right people in place in the seats, so that way when they go to present their offer, it's the most qualified audience you have, right? So if you're used to running webinars or ebook offers, those are people just dipping their toes in. They've invested no time, no money. But if you have somebody who's spent 1 or 2 or 3 days with you, invested that time to spend with you, they've paid a premium ticket, they've invested money, plus travel, hotel, all of that stuff. Plus they're entering in through the right frame. Ebooks, webinars, everybody's just kind of looky-loos, dipping their toes in. With events, people come to live events with a solution-minded mindset. So they are seeking a solution. So when you offer that solution to the problem that they have, perfect. They're qualified, they have the means, you've done that, and your ticket pricing structure is the best tool you have for that. All right, so when we're building out an event that sells, building out an event that's going to be profitable, we have to look at the 3 S's. That's where we start. Then we have to take into account the revenue triad right here. You got ticket sales, sponsorship on the front end, back end is your gravy. And then we have to have that gravitational pull. And like I said, we have to make sure that pricing's on point, so you have that revenue that you can reinvest into scale. Because, going from 0 to 1,000, best thing I ever did. Very best thing I ever did. And then we hit 2,500 the next year. All right, so I hope this was helpful. I go live every single Thursday sharing stuff like this, sharing my experiences, so you can then take it and go launch your own event or scale your event, because running my conference totally changed my life. Best thing I ever did, and I want you to do the same thing. So hopefully this was helpful, and I'll see you next Thursday.